The war room of the Galactic Coalition smelled like fear. Ambassador Tail Eyes could taste it in the air, could see it in the dim, flickering lights of his fellow delegates. They were a peaceful species. They had never needed weapons. They had never needed soldiers. For 10,000 years, they had solved their problems with words and wisdom. But words could not stop the swarm. Tail Eyes stood at the center of the great chamber, surrounded by representatives from 37 species, the with their silver skin and 4 arms, the with their massive bodies and gentle eyes, the who floated in their water tanks, all of them united by one terrible truth. They were losing. The holographic display behind Tail Eyes showed the galaxy map. Red dots marked the worlds that had consumed. There were so many red dots now, too many. Each dot was a civilization erased. Each dot was billions of lives ended. The red was spreading like a disease, eating through the galaxy one system at a time. "We have lost contact with the 7th Fleet," Tail Eyes announced. His voice did not shake. He would not let it shake. "The defense line has fallen. They have entered the inner systems." Panic rippled through the chamber. The delegate made a sound of pure grief. The water bubbled with distress. Even the normally calm shifted in their seats. "How long?" someone asked. "How long before they reach the core worlds?" 8 months, Tail Eyes said, "perhaps less." Silence fell. 8 months. 8 months until everything they had built, everything they had loved, everything they had dreamed would be consumed by the endless hunger of the swarm. High Coordinator of the rose from her seat. She was old, even by her species' long standards. She had seen wars before, but never one like this. "We have tried everything," she said. "Our weapons cannot kill them fast enough. Our ships cannot outrun them. Our soldiers cannot match their numbers. For every drone we destroy, 10 more take its place. We cannot win this war through force." "Then what do you suggest?" The question came from the delegate, his massive hands gripping the table. "Should we simply wait to die?" Tail Eyes took a deep breath. He had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. 3 years studying the forbidden files. 3 years learning about the species that the Coalition had avoided for centuries. "There is one option we have not tried," he said. The chamber went quiet. Something in his tone made everyone pay attention. "We must contact the humans." The reaction was immediate. The delegate jumped to his feet. Thus 4 arms crossed in a gesture of absolute rejection. Even the, normally so peaceful, created waves of agitation in their tanks. "The humans," his voice was sharp. "You cannot be serious. They are barely spacefaring. They have only had faster-than-light travel for 2 centuries. What could they possibly offer against the—" "Not the humans themselves," Tail Eyes said. He touched a control and the holographic display changed. Now it showed images, recordings that Coalition observers had made of Earth over the past 500 years. Their companions. The first image showed a human child sleeping. This was not unusual. Many species slept. But curled around the child was a creature with fur and claws and teeth designed for killing. A wolf descendant, the files called it. A dog. This creature's ancestors hunted in packs, Tail Eyes explained. They could bring down prey 10 times their size. Their bite force can crush bone. They have been responsible for thousands of human deaths throughout history. He changed the image. Now it showed a human adult with a bird on his arm. The bird had a curved beak and talons like knives. "This is a falcon. It can dive at speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. Its talons can pierce skulls. It is one of the most efficient killing machines in Earth's ecosystem." Another image. A human woman swimming in water with a creature that had rows of razor-sharp teeth. "This is a shark. It can smell blood from kilometers away. It has been eating other species for 400 million years. It is pure predatory instinct given form." The delegates watched in growing horror as image after image appeared. Snakes that could swallow creatures whole. Spiders with venom that organs. Great cats that could kill with a single swipe of their paws. Insects that devoured their prey alive. "These creatures are monsters," whispered. "How have humans survived on that planet?" "They have not just survived," Talai said. "They have formed bonds with these creatures. They keep them in their homes. They sleep beside them. They call them family." "That is insane." "Yes," Talai agreed. "By our standards, it is completely insane. But consider this. For 50,000 years, humans have been learning to work with apex predators. They have been training creatures that evolution designed purely for killing. They have been building relationships with nightmares." He let that sink in. "They are predators," Talai continued. "They have never encountered anything except prey. They do not understand what it means to face something that hunts them back. But the humans do. The humans have spent their entire existence surrounded by things that could kill them, and instead of running away, they taught those things to love them." The chamber was silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing. It was madness. It was desperate. It was their only hope. "Send the message," said finally. Her voice was heavy with exhaustion and fear. "Contact the humans. Ask them to bring their nightmares." 3 months later, on a small blue planet that the galaxy had avoided for so long, Lieutenant of the Korean Space Forces read the transmission for the third time. Her German shepherd sat at her feet, watching her with intelligent brown eyes. The message was simple. The galaxy was dying. They needed warriors. They needed hunters. They needed creatures that could fight the darkness. Looked around the room. Captain stood by the window, his falcon perched on his arm. Sergeant was cleaning his rifle while his dozed beside him. In the corner, Corporal was feeding a mouse to her python, Noodle. They were soldiers, but more than that, they were handlers, trainers, partners to creatures that other species considered monsters. "Well," said, reaching down to scratch behind's ears. "Looks like the galaxy needs our help." His tail wagged once. His eyes never left her face. He did not understand the words, but he understood her. He always had. That was what 50,000 years of partnership meant. They were going to war, and they were bringing family. The Coalition flagship Eternal Light was the largest ship ever built by any species in the known galaxy. It stretched for 12 kilometers from bow to stern. It carried a crew of 40,000. It had weapons that could crack planets and shields that could stop stars. None of that prepared them for the humans. Ambassador Taileyes waited in the main docking bay with 200 Coalition soldiers and 15 diplomats from various species. They had prepared for this moment carefully. The gravity was set to Earth standard. The temperature was adjusted to human comfort. They had even researched human greeting customs. But they had not prepared for what came through the airlock. Lieutenant stepped through first. She was smaller than Taileyes had expected. Humans were not impressive by galactic standards. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons of any kind. Their skin was soft and easily damaged. Their bodies were fragile. Yet something about the way she moved made Taileyes nervous. There was a confidence there, a certainty. This was a creature who knew exactly how dangerous the universe was and walked into it anyway. Ambassador Taileyes said. Her voice was calm and professional. "Thank you for receiving us." "We are grateful you came," Taileyes replied. "The Coalition is honored by your presence." Behind, more humans entered the bay. Captain came next, and on his arm sat a creature that made every alien in the room freeze. The falcon was small compared to the humans. It weighed perhaps 2 kilograms, but its eyes were the eyes of a killer. They scanned the room with cold precision, tracking movement, calculating distances, identifying prey. "This is," said. He stroked the bird's feathers with obvious affection. "She has been my partner for 6 years." Taileyes forced himself to stay still. His instincts screamed at him to run. The falcon's gaze passed over him like a predator examining a meal it had not yet decided to eat. Then came Sergeant with his. The dog was larger than the falcon, perhaps 30 kilograms of muscle and fur. Its ears stood straight up, constantly moving, listening for threats. Its eyes never stopped scanning. When it walked, it moved like water flowing around stones. Smooth, controlled, ready. Said, patting the dog's head, "Best soldier I ever served with." The dog's tail wagged once at the praise, but its eyes remained sharp, watching, waiting. More humans entered, more creatures. A woman named carried a cage with 3 hawks inside. A man named had containers of what he cheerfully explained were venomous spiders. A young soldier named brought cases filled with insects that could devour flesh in minutes. With each new creature, the coalition delegates stepped backward. With each new nightmare, the aliens' fear grew stronger. Then came. She walked through the airlock with the casual confidence of someone taking a morning stroll. Beside her, on a reinforced leash, walked 400 pounds of orange and black death. The tiger's name was. Tail Eyes had seen images of Earth's big cats. He had read the files. He knew that tigers were apex predators, capable of killing creatures 10 times their size. He knew their claws could tear through metal. He knew their bite force could crush bones like dry wood. None of that prepared him for seeing one in person. Moved with liquid grace. Each step was silent despite his massive size. His eyes were golden, ancient, patient. They held the knowledge of countless hunts, countless kills. When he looked at Tail Eyes, the ambassador felt a very old fear wake up in his bones. This was a creature designed by evolution for one purpose: killing. "He is very friendly," said, scratching behind the tiger's ears. Made a sound. It might have been a purr. It sounded like an engine of death warming up. "He loves belly rubs." 3 diplomats fainted. 2 soldiers dropped their weapons and ran. One's tank cracked from the pressure of their distress. But the worst was yet to come. Corporal entered last. She was a young woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She looked harmless, friendly, completely normal. Then everyone saw what was wrapped around her shoulders. The python was 12 feet long and as thick as a human thigh. Its scales gleamed under the bay lights, patterns of brown and gold shifting with each movement. Its body coiled around its torso in an embrace that could have crushed starship hull plating. Its head rested on her shoulder. Its tongue flickered out, tasting the air, tasting the fear. "His name is Noodle," said. She kissed the snake's head with obvious love. "He is very gentle. He would never hurt anyone." The snake's eyes found Tail Eyes. They were cold, empty, ancient. This creature's ancestors had been hunting warm-blooded prey since before his species had learned to walk. It did not hate, it did not love, it simply was. And in that moment, Tail Eyes understood why the coalition had avoided Earth for so long. It was not because humans were dangerous. By galactic standards, they were weak, fragile, easy to kill. It was because humans had learned to make nightmares into family. They did not just tolerate these killing machines. They loved them. They slept beside them. They trusted them with their children. They had spent 50,000 years building bonds with creatures that could end their lives in seconds. That was the true horror, not the claws or the fangs or the venom. The horror was that humans looked at death and decided to hug it. "You asked for soldiers," Lieutenant said. Her voice was calm, professional, almost friendly. Sat at her feet, alert and ready. Around her, the nightmare menagerie waited with patient hunger. "We sent you something better." She smiled. "We sent you family." Tail Eyes realized his hands were shaking. He had asked for this. He had begged the coalition to contact the humans. He had promised they would save everyone. Now, looking at the creatures that filled his docking bay, he wondered if the galaxy had made a terrible mistake. Or perhaps, just perhaps, they had finally found something that could make the feel fear. "Welcome to the coalition," Tail Eyes said. His voice only shook a little. "We have much to discuss." The falcon screamed, the dogs barked, the tiger rumbled. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the swarm continued its advance, completely unaware that the galaxy had just called something far worse than soldiers. They had called humans, and humans never came alone. They had never known fear. For 300 years they had swept through the galaxy like a plague of hunger. They were not evil, they did not hate, they simply consumed. That was their nature, that was their purpose. Every world they touched became food, every species they met became meat. They had devoured 17 civilizations. They had eaten stars. They had grown so vast that their numbers darkened entire sectors of space. And they had never, not once, encountered anything that made them hesitate. Until Station. The station hung in orbit around a dead world, a massive structure that had once been home to 50,000 coalition citizens. They had built it as a research facility. They had expanded it into a trade hub. For 2 centuries, it had been a symbol of galactic cooperation. Now it was a tomb. They had taken it in less than 6 hours. Their drones had poured through the corridors like living acid, killing everything they touched. The defenders had fought bravely. They had died quickly. By the time Coalition Command received the distress signal, there was no one left to save. High Coordinator gave the order to destroy the station. Better to burn it than let them use it as a staging ground. The Coalition fleet moved into position, weapons charging for a bombardment that would turn into dust. Then the human arrived. Coalition Command, this is Lieutenant of the Korean Special Forces. We are requesting permission to board the station. Stared at the communication screen in disbelief. Lieutenant, the station is completely overrun. Our scans show at least 50,000 drones inside. Your force numbers less than 200. Yes, ma'am, that is why we are asking permission. You will die. There was a pause, then's voice came back calm and almost amused. With respect, High Coordinator, we brought friends. They did not wait for permission. They burned hard toward the station, dodging defensive fire that they had managed to activate. Within minutes, they had breached the outer hull and forced entry into the main corridor. What happened next would become legend. Staff Sergeant was first through the breach. He was a large man, built like a warrior, but he was not what made the drones hesitate. That was. The pit bull weighed only 30 kilograms. She was small compared to the alien horrors waiting in the darkness. Her fur was brown and white, and she had a scar across her muzzle from a training accident years ago. She looked almost friendly. She was not. The first drone lunged at with claws extended, hit it from the side at full speed. Her jaws clamped onto its throat with 1,700 pounds of pressure per square inch. The creature that had torn through warriors like paper found itself pinned to the ground by an animal that simply would not let go. More drones came, killed them all. She did not stop. She did not slow. She did not feel doubt or hesitation or mercy. For 50,000 years, her ancestors had been bred for exactly this kind of violence. Close quarters, overwhelming odds, enemies on all sides. This was what pit bulls were made for. Behind, more handlers pushed into the station. Sergeant released, and they became a blur of fur and teeth, faster than anything they had ever seen. Private let loose his pack of hunting hounds, bred for centuries to chase prey through impossible terrain. Specialist opened a cage and released something called a honey badger. They had never seen a honey badger. They would never forget one. The creature was small, smaller than even the dogs. It weighed perhaps 12 kilograms. It looked almost cute with its striped fur and rounded ears. It was absolutely insane. The honey badger charged directly into a group of 15 drones. It did not care that it was outnumbered. It did not care that the enemies were bigger. It attacked with a fury that bordered on madness, biting and clawing and screaming with rage. They had evolved to fight prey. Prey ran, prey hid, prey tried to survive. The honey badger attacked. It made no sense. Nothing that small should attack something that large. Nothing that outnumbered should charge forward instead of retreating. The drones hesitated, confused by behavior that violated every rule of survival they understood. That hesitation cost them everything. While the ground animals caused chaos below, the air belonged to the birds. Specialist released her hawks through the ventilation system. The birds screamed through the corridors at incredible speeds, talons extended, eyes locked on targets. They hit the drones from angles that the aliens could not defend. From above, from behind, from directions that ground-dwelling creatures never expected attacks to come from. The compound eyes were designed to watch for threats at their level. They were not designed for creatures that attacked from three-dimensional space with the speed of missiles and the precision of surgeons. Hawk after hawk struck, drone after drone fell, the corridors filled with feathers and chitin and blood. But the battle truly turned when reached the ventilation control room. The young private was not a fighter. He was small and quiet and preferred reading to combat training, but he carried something far more dangerous than any weapon. Spiders. Thousands of them. He opened the containers and released them into the station's air system. Funnel-web spiders, bred for aggression and enhanced with genetic modifications that increased their venom production. Brown recluses, whose bite caused flesh to rot away from bone. Black widows, whose toxin attacked nervous systems. They had evolved immunity to most poisons. There was toxic. Their bodies were designed to process dangerous chemicals. They had never encountered earth spider venom. Within hours, drones began to die in ways they had never experienced. Their limbs stopped working. Their internal organs dissolved. Their nervous systems shut down one synapse at a time. They did not understand what was happening. They could not see the enemy. They could not fight something so small, so numerous, so completely invisible. By the time the last spider finished its work, station was silent. Lieutenant walked through the corridors afterward at her side. The station was littered with bodies. 50,000 drones, killed by less than 200 humans and their companions. She knelt beside one of the dead aliens. It was massive, 3 times her size, covered in armor that coalition weapons struggled to penetrate, and it had been killed by a spider no bigger than her thumbnail. "They evolved to be predators," said softly. "They spent millions of years becoming the perfect hunters." Whined and pressed against her leg. "But we spent millions of years living with predators, learning from them, becoming part of their packs." She stood up and scratched behind her dog's ears. "They never learned how to be prey. We never forgot." The coalition fleet watched in stunned silence. They had planned to destroy the station. The humans had saved it with dogs and birds and spiders. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the hive mind processed what had happened. For the first time in 300 years of conquest, it felt something new. It felt afraid. Doctor had spent 300 years studying alien species. She had written 47 books on comparative biology. She had won every scientific award the coalition offered. She was considered the greatest in galactic history. She could not understand humans. The laboratory aboard the Eternal Light was filled with monitoring equipment, sensors, and recording devices. Had been studying the human soldiers for 6 months now, observing their behavior, analyzing their relationships with their animal companions, trying to make sense of something that all logic. Lieutenant sat across from her, a cup of coffee in one hand. Lay at her feet, eyes half closed but ears still alert. The dog never truly relaxed. Even in sleep, some part of him was always watching, always listening, always ready. "I have reviewed all the data," said. Her 4 arms moved constantly, a sign of frustration in body language. "I have studied your history. I have analyzed your evolution, and I still do not understand." Sipped her coffee. "What specifically confuses you?" "Everything." Pulled up a holographic display. Your species has been killed by dogs over 50,000 times in recorded history. Your cats carry parasites that alter brain chemistry. Your horses have broken more human bones than any war. Why do you keep these creatures in your homes? Because they are family. That is not a scientific explanation. Smiled. It was a patient smile, the kind given to someone who was missing something obvious. No, it is better than a scientific explanation. It is the truth. Made a sound of frustration. But it makes no evolutionary sense. Creatures that can harm you should be avoided. That is the basic rule of survival. Every species in the galaxy follows this logic. You do not. Maybe that is why we are still here. The words hung in the air, considered them carefully. Explain, she said. Set down her coffee and leaned forward. Earth is not a kind world, Doctor. It is filled with predators and poisons and parasites. Everything on our planet is trying to kill everything else. We evolved in an environment of constant danger. So did many species. They developed defenses, armor, toxins, speed. We developed something different. Reached down and ran her fingers through fur. The dog's tail wagged slowly. We developed the ability to make friends with things that could kill us. Shook her head. I do not understand how that is possible. It starts with understanding, said. When our ancestors first met wolves, they could have seen them as threats. Many probably did, but some of our ancestors looked at those wolves and saw something familiar. Pack hunters, social creatures, beings that protected their families and worked together to survive. She scratched behind's ears. The dog made a sound of contentment. So instead of fighting them, we made them part of our pack. We shared food. We shared warmth. We shared protection. Over thousands of years, the wolves changed. They became dogs, and we changed too. We became creatures capable of loving something that could tear our throats out. Stared at the dog. Eyes met hers. They were not the cold eyes of a predator measuring prey. They were warm eyes, loyal eyes, eyes that held thousands of generations of partnership. That is still irrational, said, but her voice was softer now. Is it? Asked. Look at what we have accomplished together. Alone, humans are weak. We have no claws, no fangs, no armor. But with dogs, we became the greatest hunters on our planet. With horses, we conquered continents. With falcons, we controlled the skies. She gestured around the laboratory, at the screens showing footage of the Battle of Station. They are powerful. They have numbers and armor and a hive mind that coordinates millions of drones. But they have never learned to work with other species. They consume everything they meet. They do not know how to build trust. And you do. We have been practicing for 50,000 years. That night, Doctor decided to observe the humans in their quarters. She wanted to understand the bond they kept talking about. She wanted to see it with her own eyes. What she saw changed everything she thought she knew about the universe. Corporal was sleeping in her bunk. Her python, Noodle, was coiled around her body. 12 feet of muscle and scales wrapped around a creature made of soft flesh and fragile bones. One squeeze knew, and the snake could crush every rib in the girl's body. But the snake did not squeeze, it rested. Its head lay on shoulder. Its tongue flickered occasionally, tasting the air, checking for threats, not threats to itself. Threats to her. In the next room, Sergeant sat on the floor with his. The dog had been wounded in a training exercise. Nothing serious, just a cut on his leg that needed bandaging. Was carefully cleaning the wound, his hands gentle, his voice soft. Good boy, he murmured. Such a brave boy, you did so well today. His tail wagged despite the pain. His eyes never left his face. The trust there was absolute, complete. The dog did not understand complex tactics or galactic politics, but he understood that this human was his pack, and pack protected each other. Watched specialists spend 4 hours performing delicate surgery on a spider. The creature's leg had been damaged during transport. Any rational being would have simply disposed of it. There were thousands more in the breeding containers, but did not dispose of it. He worked through the night, using microscopic tools and steady hands, doing everything possible to save a single spider that most species would have stepped on without thinking. "She is one of mine," he explained when asked why. His voice was matter-of-fact, as if the answer was obvious. "I do not abandon family." By morning, had filled 17 data files with observations, but the data was not what mattered. What mattered was what she felt. She found Lieutenant in the mess hall, eating breakfast while dozed at her feet. Sat across from her, all four arms folded in a gesture of deep thought. "I think I understand now," said. "Oh, you humans are not crazy. You are brave in a way my species cannot comprehend." Looked down at the dog. "You saw creatures that could kill you and decided to love them anyway. You chose trust over fear. You chose connection over safety." Smiled, and what did we get in return? Thought about the Battle of Station. She thought about dogs that charged into overwhelming odds and spiders that killed without being seen and birds that struck from impossible angles. You got an army that fights not for survival, but for love. "Yes," reached down and scratched ears. The dog's tail wagged happily. "That is what pack means. That is what family means. We do not fight because we have to. We fight because we would do anything to protect the ones we love." She met's eyes. "And that is something that we'll never understand." The war lasted 7 years. 7 years of blood and fire and screaming. 7 years of battles that stretched across 1,000 star systems. 7 years of losses and victories and moments where the fate of the entire galaxy hung by a thread. They had never faced an enemy like this before. They had conquered species with better weapons. They had devoured civilizations with larger armies. They had crushed empires that seemed impossible to defeat. But they had never fought something that could not be consumed. The humans taught them what fear meant. Captain's Falcon became a legend. The bird had killed over 200 drones personally, each strike precise, each kill clean. Commanders learned to watch the skis. They learned to flinch at shadows. They learned that death could come from above faster than their compound eyes could track. Sergeant and became heroes. There was wounded 17 times during the war. 17 times he dragged himself back into the fight because his human was in danger. On the final day of the Siege of Prime, took a claw through his shoulder and still managed to tear out the throat of the drone that was about to kill. The dog survived. He always survived. That was what love meant. Specialist and her tiger were responsible for breaking the assault on Coalition headquarters. The great cat killed so many drones that they began retreating at the mere sight of him. They did not understand how something so large could move so silently. They did not understand how something so powerful could be controlled by such a small creature. They did not understand that was not being controlled. He was protecting his pack. The spiders spread through territory like a plague of tiny terrors. Private trained others in his methods. By the 5th year of the war, there were spider colonies on every front line. They learned to fear the ventilation systems. They learned to dread enclosed spaces. They learned that the smallest creatures could be the most deadly. And through it all, commander and led from the front. The German Shepherd was old now, gray around his muzzle, slower than he had been when the war started. But his eyes were still sharp. His loyalty was still absolute. When walked into battle, walked beside her. When she rested, he curled at her feet. When she cried for the soldiers they had lost, he pressed against her and whined softly until she felt better. That was what 50,000 years of partnership meant. Not just fighting together, living together, grieving together, being there for each other in ways that went beyond words. The final battle happened in the home system. The Coalition fleet surrounded the planet where the hive mind had evolved. For 300 years, this world had been the source of endless hunger, sending out swarm after swarm to consume the galaxy. Now it was surrounded, trapped. Ambassador Tailai stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the human prepare for the final assault. He had changed in 7 years. His bioluminescence was dimmer now. He had seen too much death to glow as brightly as before. But there was hope in his light. That was new. "We could bombard them from orbit," he said to Commander. "It would be safer." Shook her head, sat at her feet, alert despite his age. "They are not just monsters, Ambassador. They are living creatures. If we destroy their planet without giving them a chance, we become no better than they were. They would not show us the same mercy." "I know," smiled sadly. "But mercy is not about what others deserve. It is about who we choose to be." The final assault was not a massacre. It was a negotiation backed by overwhelming force. The humans landed on them with their companions at their sides. Dogs and cats and birds and snakes. Tigers and spiders and creatures that the galaxy had learned to fear almost as much as themselves. The hive mind was ancient. It had been thinking for millions of years, coordinating billions of bodies, planning the consumption of entire galaxies. It had never considered that anything could threaten it. Now it considered very carefully. The negotiations lasted 3 weeks. In the end, they agreed to remain within their home cluster. They would not expand. They would not consume. They would learn to coexist. Some in the coalition wanted more. They wanted revenge for the billions who had died. They wanted them wiped out completely. But the humans refused. "We spent 50,000 years learning to live with predators," Commander explained to the coalition assembly. "We can teach the galaxy to do the same." It was not perfect. There were still incidents in the years that followed, who refused to accept the peace. Coalition members who attacked territory seeking revenge. The old hatreds did not disappear overnight. But the war was over. The galaxy had survived. 10 years after the war ended, Ambassador Tailai stood before the coalition assembly once more. The chamber was different now. There were humans in the gallery, and with them, their companions. Dogs slept at their feet. Birds perched on their shoulders. A python coiled around one woman's torso like a living scarf. The galaxy had learned not to flinch at these sights. Some species had even begun forming their own partnerships with Earth creatures, with cats, with horses. Even a few had adapted their tanks to accommodate fish that they had developed strange affections for. "We asked for soldiers," Tailai said, his bioluminescence warm with gratitude. "You sent us nightmares." Commander smiled from her seat in the gallery. Was gone now, passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 years before. But a new dog sat at her feet, a young German shepherd named that she had trained from a puppy. The cycle continued. It always continued. "You asked for weapons," corrected gently. "We sent you family. There is a difference." Tailai's nodded slowly. He understood now. After 7 years of war and 10 years of peace, he finally understood what made humans special. It was not their technology. It was not their tactics. It was not even their strange nightmare companions. It was their capacity to love. They looked at creatures that could kill them and decided to trust them anyway. They faced predators and made them into partners. They walked into a universe full of dangers and chose connection over isolation. The galaxy had spent centuries avoiding Earth, convinced that a species who bonded with monsters must be insane. Now they knew the truth. Humans were not insane. They were the bravest species in existence. They had spent their entire evolutionary history reaching out across every barrier, building bridges where others built walls. And when the galaxy had needed saving, they had come. Not with armies of conquest, but with families of love. Not with weapons of destruction, but with bonds that could not be broken. They had taught the galaxy what it meant to be afraid. The humans had taught them what it meant to be pack. And the galaxy would never forget. On the observation deck of the Coalition headquarters, Commander stood alone with. The dog pressed against her leg, warm and solid and absolutely devoted. Stars stretched before them, billions of lights representing billions of possibilities. "They think we saved them because we are strong," said softly. His tail wagged once. "They do not understand. We saved them because we know what it means to love something that could destroy us." She knelt down and wrapped her arms around the dog, burying her face in his fur. "That is the greatest strength of all." Licked her face. He did not understand her words, but he understood her. He always had. That was what 50,000 years of partnership meant. That was what family meant. And that was why, when the galaxy asked for soldiers, humans sent the creatures that haunted nightmares. Because nightmares, it turned out, could be taught to love. And nothing in the universe was more powerful than that.